1988 was a good year to have a hit. MTV was king. Radio still moved units, and if the right people heard your song at the right moment, you could come from nowhere and have the whole country learn your name by summer. We call that luck. And most of these 12 artists had it. They got the song. They got the push. They got the chart position that put them on everyone's lips for a season. But here's the thing about luck. It only ever runs one way. For some of these artists, the hit wasn't a door opening. It was a ceiling they didn't know they'd already hit. These are 12 one-hit wonders from 1988. And more than that, this is what happened to them after the lights went down and everyone else moved on. Number 12. Let's start with I Think We're Alone Now by Tiffany, a song that took over the radio back in 1987. Think about that for a second. Her manager, George Tobin, had an idea nobody had really tried at that scale. Skip radio's gatekeepers, take the record straight to shopping malls, and sing for whoever happened to be walking by with a soft pretzel in their hand. And it worked. It worked so well that I Think We're Alone Now went all the way to number 1. But a 16-year-old can't control what comes next, and almost nothing that came next was hers. The image was built for her. The money moved through structures no teenager could ever hope to audit, and untangling it took years of legal fights. And the very thing that made her famous, those crowded, open, anyone-can-come mall shows, also made her reachable by anyone, including a man named Alejandro Gomez Gallego, who turned up at her appearances armed and had to be arrested. She was still a kid when all of this landed on her. She spent the 90s trying new directions, and none of them brought her back to the charts. The whole machine that made her a star had been designed by someone else, from the ground up. And when that someone moved on, she was left standing on a foundation that had never really belonged to her. People remember the mall tours fondly. What they don't see is everything those tours quietly took. Number 11. Toy Soldiers, the one that made Martika's name in 1989. Martika wrote Toy Soldiers about addiction, real addiction, people she actually watched fall, and you can hear that it comes from somewhere true. The chorus was too honest to look away from, and it carried her all the way to number 1. And then, of all people, Prince called. The man who'd spent the entire decade at the white-hot center of music wanted to produce her second record. Picture being 20 years old and getting that phone call. The album, Martika's Kitchen, arrived in 1991. The critics gave it a respectful nod. The audience just didn't come. And that's the part that's hard to sit with because, look at the math. A number 1 hit. Prince behind the boards. A young artist with something real to say. Every single ingredient you'd need for a second act. And the result was quiet. The soldiers in that video kept tumbling down, one after another. Nobody ever wrote the song about what came after. At number 10, we've got Shattered Dreams by Johnny Hates Jazz, released in 1988. Clark Datchler wrote this one from a very particular place. That strange, clear-eyed calm that only settles in after something has already broken for good. It's not an angry song, and it's not a sad one exactly. It's the sound of someone standing in the wreckage of a relationship, and for the first time, seeing it plainly. That kind of honesty is hard to fake, and audiences could feel it was real. It went top 5 in the UK, and then it did the thing British acts spent whole careers chasing. It crossed the Atlantic and connected with America, too. Everything had lined up, and that's exactly the moment Datchler chose to walk away. Not from music, but from the band. From all that momentum. Right when the whole thing had finally clicked into place, his reasons were his own. The rest of the group kept going under the same name, reaching a few less people with every record. He did come back, eventually, on his own terms, which by then meant the commercial window had long since closed. What's left is a song you've absolutely heard, tied to a band name that sits right on the tip of your tongue and won't quite come. Plenty of artists lose success. Very few hand it back at the precise moment it finally shows up. If you've made it this far with me, you already know what kind of channel this is. Sticking around doesn't cost you a thing. That subscribe button is right there. And if you're enjoying this, type 6 in the comments so I know you're still with me. Okay, back to it. Number 9. And this one's She's Like the Wind, written and sung by Patrick Swayze, out in 1987. It wasn't written for a movie. It was just a man putting down a quiet ache, a longing for something just out of reach, and then tucking it away in a drawer. When they were assembling the Dirty Dancing soundtrack, someone pulled it back out. It climbed to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. Just a fool to believe I have anything she needs. But success has a way of deciding who you get to be. Swayze had trained hard as a dancer and as an actor, and he wanted more than romantic leads and soundtrack singles. The hit handed him a version of himself the industry loved to sell, and one he found a little too small to live in. In 2008, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He kept working straight through the treatment, and he died in September 2009. What he hoped to be remembered for, and what the world decided to remember, were never quite the same thing. And there's something tender and human in that gap. She's like the wind. Number 8 belongs to What's on Your Mind by Information Society, a 1988 release. Kurt Harlan didn't burn out, and he didn't quit in any dramatic way. That's the first thing to understand about him. He was the kind of person who thought in numbers, who needed the math of a thing to actually add up before he'd keep doing it. And for a while, at the front of Information Society, it did. He wasn't chasing fame so much as chasing a sound, one he believed in enough to give years of his life to, which is exactly why What Happened Later lands the way it does. Information Society had spent years in Minneapolis building something, synth pop, with sharper teeth than most of what pop radio was playing. When What's on Your Mind cracked the top 10, it felt like the payoff for all that patience. Then the follow-up album landed in 1990 into a world that had already changed underneath them. What sounded fresh 2 years earlier suddenly sounded like the past. So Harlan stepped back, and the band kept going without him, which somehow made the empty space where he'd been even louder. But here's the turn nobody saw coming. He became a video game composer and went on to work on the Mass Effect trilogy. Music heard by tens of millions of people who had no clue the guy behind it had once stood on an MTV stage. Was that a fall or an escape? Depends entirely on where you thought his ceiling was supposed to be. Sitting at number 7, My Girl by Suave from 1988. Start with the name itself. One word, Suave. No last name, no backstory handed out to the public, nothing for a listener to hold on to except the voice. And behind that voice was a man named Raul Solis, singing out of Houston, Texas. There was something almost deliberate about how little he gave away, as if the mystery was part of the appeal. For a moment, it worked. My Girl was smooth enough that R&B programmers found it easy to add and then easy to keep adding, but the follow-up never really arrived. Nothing the industry cared to notice anyway. No second single broke through, the label's eyes drifted elsewhere, and Solis found himself on the far side of a hit with nothing built to catch him. And what happened to him after that is genuinely hard to trace, because so little of it was ever written down. No VH1 special, no sit-down interview about what the whole thing cost, just a quiet gap in the record that only seems to grow the harder you go looking. He deserved better documentation than history gave him. Number 6, Da Butt by EU, which landed in 1988. To understand why this one matters, you have to know where EU came from. They weren't chasing a pop hit. They were a go-go band out of Washington, D.C., deep in a scene that lived and breathed in that city and nowhere else. Go-go? Go was local music in the truest sense, sweaty, percussive, built for the room it was played in. EU had spent years inside that world before anyone outside the district knew their name. So when the call came, they weren't beginners. They were a working band that already knew exactly who they were.
I said, come in, big girl, won't you rock my world? Show that.
Spike Lee asked EU to write something for a party scene in School Days, and they turned it around in a matter of hours. Released as a single, Da Butt shot to #1 on the R&B charts and handed go-go music its first real national audience. And for one bright moment, it genuinely looked like go-go might do what punk and hip-hop had done, break out of its home city and change the whole conversation.
Walk in this place, surprised to say.
The industry decided otherwise. After that window shut, no go-go act got real major label backing. EU kept recording, kept performing, kept the culture breathing right there at home. But the door that swung open in 1988 closed again, before almost anyone got to walk through it. A sound that reached the whole country ended up staying in one city that loved it best.
If you wanna learn about all night long.
At number 5, it's Love Changes Everything by Climby Fisher, released in 1988.
I was only fooling around, but she stole.
Some people understand recording technology the way others speak a second language, fluently, without ever stopping to translate. That was Rob Fisher. He wasn't a frontman by instinct. He was a builder, someone who heard how a song should be assembled from the inside out. Paired with Simon Climby, a singer and writer who could carry the emotion out front, the two of them formed a partnership where each covered exactly what the other lacked. On paper, it was the kind of balance most duos never find.
Can't forget her, all the lessons that I learned.
When he and Simon Climby built Love Changes Everything, it went top 10 in the UK and reached across borders with a warmth that sounded like it cost them no effort at all. The second album came and didn't catch. The partnership came apart gently, and the two men went their own ways. Climby toward production work with Eric Clapton, Fisher toward session arranging.
Like a raging fire it burned.
Then, in 1999, Rob Fisher died. He was 39, a rare intestinal condition, nothing to do with the music or any choice he'd made along the way. The song promises that love changes everything. What it never warns you is that sometimes everything ends before you've had the chance to finish.
Love changes everything.
Number 4, Strange But True, the one and only hit from Times 2, back in 1988.
Reached for someone else.
They were sold to us as a matched pair. 2 voices, 1 sound, the kind of tidy symmetry that played beautifully on MTV back when the look mattered nearly as much as the record. That was the whole idea behind Times 2. A duo built to be watched as much as heard, arriving right when the channel could turn the right image into a hit almost on its own. And for a while, the concept did exactly what it was designed to do.
Down the walls, it's strange but true.
Strange But True climbed to number 21 in the US, enough to make everyone expect the next single to land just as cleanly. But the label had other plans, or maybe no plans at all. And honestly, from this distance, it's hard to tell those two apart. A follow-up came and went without connecting, and the machine simply rolled on to whoever was next.
See that I should dare to
The two of them moved on to lives that had nothing to do with pop music. And the funny thing is the record outlived the career by decades. Strange but true, still drifts up out of those forgotten 80s playlists now and then. The title ended up aging in a way nobody planning it could have guessed. Number 3 brings us When We Kiss by Bardot, out in 1988.
It was late one night and we had a fight, and it seemed like
Before there was a song, there was a meeting. That's the part worth holding on to with Bardot. The whole thing started as a concept in a room, a producer and a label deciding a hit should exist before anyone had been chosen to sing it. This wasn't two friends who'd been making music together for years. It was a project, assembled from the top down, and the artists were brought in to fill a shape that had already been drawn for them.
days go by and I still watch so it was up to me. I never.
Shep Pettibone built the track. Anissa Kamene and Cynthia Ross came in to give it a voice and a face. The image, the sound, the whole shape of it had been assembled before the two of them fully understood what they were stepping into. And the seams showed the second the hit stopped hitting. There was no second sound to reach for because the first one had never really been theirs. It belonged to the producer, and he'd already gone on to the next thing.
I'm not the type to just sit and wait. I made up my mind.
They split without any ceremony, without a final statement to call their own. No clean ending, no bold artistic pivot, just a contract that ran out and a name that quietly dropped off the listings. And that's the quiet ache of Bardot. They were never really given the room to become artists in the first place. It's hard not to wonder who they might have been if someone had let them try.
Do you remember the night? I can see it so clear.
Number 2, Supersonic by J.J. Fad, released in 1988.
Supersonic.
Getting signed to Ruthless Records in 1987 should have been the safest bet in the world. This was Eazy-E's label, the place where the whole West Coast sound was about to be built, and being on that roster meant standing at the center of something everyone could feel was coming. For a group of young women in rap, still a rarity at the time, landing there wasn't just a deal. It was supposed to be a foothold in history.
You might not believe it. You might not even buy it.
Eazy-E was building something on that label. Everyone inside the building could feel it. And J.J. Fad were right up front on the roster. Supersonic charted, and then it earned them a Grammy nomination for Best Rap Performance. The first female rap group ever recognized in that category. That's not a small thing. That's history.
Supersonic motivating rhymes are creating.
But nobody sat them down and told them plainly where the label's real money and attention were headed. NWA were on that same roster, and every resource in the building flowed their direction. J.J. Fad made a second album. Ruthless sat on it. And by the time the group came apart, the window had already closed. The very structure that lifted them up had moved on to make history with somebody else. Turns out being first doesn't mean anyone's going to protect you.
Deaf, but you're way behind, so you better listen.
And finally, number 1, I Want to Be Your Man by Zapp and Roger from 1987.
Every time I see you walking by,
Because Roger didn't stumble into a sound, he built one from scratch. He picked up a talk box and found frequencies inside it nobody had ever mapped. A voice that was half human and half machine. And unlike anything else on the radio, by 1987 he wasn't some new arrival hoping for a break. He'd already been quietly shaping music for years. And then it happened twice. In 1996, Tupac Shakur sampled Roger's voice on California Love, and the song went to number 1. A brand new generation heard that talk box and had to know where it came from. The rare second chapter almost nobody in his position ever gets. Which brings us back to that studio in Dayton. Roger Troutman was shot outside it, and his brother Larry had pulled the trigger before turning the gun on himself. Roger was 47. The talk box was still sitting in the studio, and the one man who understood everything it could do was gone. 12 songs. 12 moments where everything, just for a little while, lined up exactly right. The perfect sound, the perfect year, the perfect dose of luck. But luck doesn't ship with a second installment. Some of these artists faded out quietly. Some fought hard and lost anyway. And some never even got the chance to step into the ring. Maybe that's the part worth sitting with for a minute. The hit is the easy thing to celebrate. We do it all the time. Harder and truer is looking at what it cost to hold that hit for a moment and what it quietly took with it when it left. If any of these stories landed differently than you expected them to, I'd really like to hear about it below. And if there's a one-hit wonder from some other era you think deserves this same treatment, tell me. I'm listening.
See that I should